Welcome back in. It's now time for our roundtable with our News Channel 5 political analyst, Brian Crowley. Brian, thank you as always for being here. And we've got quite the political topic to cover today. And of course, I'm talking about potholes. I'm kidding. Former President Donald Trump becoming the first U.S. president to be convicted of a crime, let alone 34 felonies in the state of New York. First of all, just reacting to that verdict on Thursday evening.
Well, you know, it was a historic verdict. It's something we've never seen in this country before, and we got a little bit of a taste of what it may mean to the campaign. You know, Donald Trump spoke on Friday outside of a Trump Tower in New York and expressed his grievances, shall we say, with the judicial system and
others.
One of the interesting things that I think is starting to percolate from that, though, is that his advisors don't want him to necessarily ignore the trial, but that may not be the sole thing that people are voting on come November. So at some point, he needs to talk more and more about what he would do with a second term as president. And of course, the other interesting thing that happened on Friday was that Joe Biden came out and spoke briefly about it, and he took obviously the opposite approach, and for those, he warned everybody about being reckless, dangerous, and irresponsible in their attitudes towards the judicial system, and hoping, I think, to calm everybody down a little bit, but I think it's going to take a while for people to calm down on both sides.
It's a lot of information to take in, and it was a lot to take in very quickly that evening when a lot of people were expecting perhaps the jurors to take longer than a day and a half to deliberate on 34 felony counts when you have all of this testimony, all of these documents over 5 weeks, 6 weeks. But now, as soon as that verdict was read, Republicans really kicked into campaign mode. Just scrolling through social media, I saw so many Republicans asking for money. Of course, the groups raising money for Donald Trump, using this as kind of a rallying cry. And I've got some numbers here in front of me. Just in the first 6 hours after the verdict was read, the Trump campaign said they raised $34.8 million. Again, this is all before Friday morning. And the fundraising site that the Trump campaign uses, WinRed, crashed the night of the verdict. Do you think this is just a flash in the pan? I mean, we still have 5 months to go before the election.
Well, two things were happening. Part of the reason WinRed crashed was because a lot of the MAGA small donors were sending in their $10, $20, $100 donations. And, you know, they're extremely loyal to Donald Trump, and they're outraged by the verdict, and they wanted to show their support by sending him some money. But the other thing that was happening last week, too, was that a number of billionaires who were sitting on the side announced that they were going to be helping Donald Trump and raising money for Donald Trump, you know, even if they write their own checks, which they can easily do, and form their own super PACs and things. They could make a big difference in the amount of money available to Donald Trump, who up until now has been behind Joe Biden in raising money. Another interesting thing that happened last week, too, is that Ron DeSantis said he was going to raise more money for Donald Trump's campaign, and he was targeting about $10 million to raise in his first outing and trying to raise money. So there's what had been a relatively slow fundraising period for Donald Trump in the first months of this year. Suddenly it appears that the waterfall of cash is coming.
Right, and you mentioned these are from the devoted, the Trump faithful. What hasn't really come up as much since the verdict was the undecided voters. There's still quite a few of those.
Yeah, I think the undecided voters are going to stay on the sidelines a little bit longer. I think they want to see how the former president reacts in the weeks ahead to the verdict. I think that there's going to be a level of discomfort with having a convicted felon running for president. I think it's part of the reason why advisors around the former president are saying that maybe don't weigh in so hard on the trial and move forward and talk about the issues that matter to people, like the economy, the border, and those kinds of things. That's what can help keep Joe Biden on defense. if he spends too much time talking about the trial and his conviction and the appeals and everything else that goes forward, it might start turning some of the undecided off.
Sure, and there's so many things that we could talk about in the days following the verdict, leading up to the sentencing on July 11th, just days before the the Republican National Convention. It would be a surprise if Donald Trump showed up at the Democratic convention.
It would indeed.
But there's so many questions that we want so badly to answer, but we just have to wait for it all to play out.
Yeah, and I think the appeals process will be interesting. I think that we need, especially the Republican leaders, to tone it down a little bit. If you want to be outraged about the verdict, fine. If you don't like how the judge handled the case, that's fine. But to, call it this big Biden Democratic conspiracy doesn't really help at all.
All right, Brian Crowley, thank you so much for your analysis as always. And let's turn now to another major issue affecting Florida, the fast approaching hyperactive hurricane season. It could be the biggest test yet of the renewed state guard. The civilian force now more than 300 members strong, and its director is saying they are prepared for what could be a nasty next few months. Our Capitol reporter, Forrest Saunders, has this look from Tallahassee.
Red tag, go to the red tag.
When we last saw the Florida State Guard help out during an emergency,
Here you go, Roger.
it was Hurricane Idalia recovery last September.
We have about 122 members of the Florida State Guard, all extremely proud Floridians who want to help and want to volunteer. Lots who have prior military experience, some who are current law enforcement, and others who are civilians like myself.
Fast forward a few months, and now the Guard is about 350 members strong. That's as Mother Nature winds up for a potentially punishing hurricane season with up to 25 named storms possible.
We are prepared.
That's State Guard Director Mark Themey. After the legislature ballooned his budget from 10 to more than $100 million, he says the volunteer force now has a lot of the stuff it needs to meet its mission as a supplement for state resources during a disaster.
You're all set, sir. Good night.
They've got more equipment and personnel. They've created ground, maritime, and air divisions and are prepping for a June training session.
I'd like to say that I'm confident my agency, the Florida State Guard, is at its highest level of preparedness, and every month we're continuing to add new capability and capacity.
Florida emergency management officials saying if this year is as bad as it could be, the Guard will definitely be used, whether that's for clearing roads, delivering supplies, or boosting rescue operations.
At the end of the day, they're a force multiplier first for things that we already do, but then they can also take on smaller missions that we may not need to call up the entire National Guard to come in and do.
And the Guard wants to keep growing. Themey has a goal of recruiting an additional 350 to 400 members, a doubling of its current force by August or September of this year. Further capability, he says, if the worst should happen.
I want to express confidence that the Florida State Guard is ready to help this state wherever they need us.
At the Capitol, Forrest Saunders, WPTV News Channel 5.
Back now with News Channel 5 political analyst Brian Crowley to talk a little bit about the Florida State Guard growing in numbers and, as you heard from Forrest, growing in budget. A $10 million budget to a $100 million budget. That is significant, and with that comes a lot of responsibility.
And just in a period of 3 years, that budget has ballooned like that. They're talking about having over 1,500 members. We haven't had a Florida State Guard since World War II, and the only reason we had it then was because the National Guard was busy fighting World War II too. This was, without criticizing the Florida State Guard and the people in it who are, I'm sure, doing their best, the reason behind it was that Ron DeSantis, the governor, he didn't want Washington to have any control, so the National Guard ultimately responds to D.C., so he wanted to form his own state guard that he could be the commander-in-chief of, and, that's grand. But I don't see that the Florida State Guard needs to get too much bigger than it already is. But we'll see in the future, because it's starting to get awfully expensive at a time when we have a shortage of teachers and a shortage of elder care nurses and a lot, homeowners insurance going through the roof and a shortage of low-income housing. There's other ways to spend that money.
Yeah, certainly, though, as a volunteer organization, if we do get a terrible hurricane this season, to have as many hands on deck helping as possible.
Sure.
Will be useful. But I don't think
That's
I've
also what
ever.
the National Guard was for. So we're sort of, I think the politics in it also reveals itself when you're sending a handful of them to Texas to help with the border crisis.
Right.
When you're announcing they're going to be involved in case any Haitians try to come here. That wasn't the original plan for the State Guard.
Sure, and of course, we also do have to bring up some tremendous reporting in the Miami Herald as of recently. There are allegations of a high-ranking official in the Florida State Guard, allegations of sexual harassment and then retaliation against the person who claims that she was harassed. So they're entering a season where there might be a critical need with this cloud hanging over their head.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in some fairness to the Guard, that doesn't mean that the 99% of the members of the Guard are not doing what they're supposed to do and doing it in a proper way. So, I mean, they are volunteering for this service, and we should appreciate anybody who volunteers to help out citizens.
Yeah, absolutely, but still hold one another, especially recipients of that much state funding, accountable.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, Brian, thank you so much, and we'll be right back in just a moment.